Being fat doesn't kill anyone.
Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Katie, and for those of you who don't know me, I used to weigh 360 pounds, and I've lost 180 pounds and kept it off for years now. And on this channel, we will discuss weight loss, weight maintenance, nonsense I see online about body positivity and fat acceptance, my experiences with all of that, and well, anything else I feel like talking about. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below, and let's get into today's video. So today I have part one of several TikToks from a new friend to the channel, as she goes by on social media, Mighty Murphin Fash. And she's got lots of opinions on plus size fashion, the health consequences of obesity, on airlines, and well, lots of other things. So I figure we'll go ahead and take a look at these together, and I'll give you my reactions along the way.
Okay, let's start with the fact that obesity, and I'm starting with that because that's how it's cited in medical research, but being fat doesn't kill anyone. Like, you will never see that cited in most places.
Okay, so we're starting off strong with obesity in quotation marks. And let's go ahead and read the comment that she is responding to. Okay, it says, "They will never accept the truth. Obesity kills and they choose to listen to body positive people promoting this lifestyle. Sad, to be honest." Okay, so that's the comment that she is responding to. But the one thing that I happen to pick up is she said, you will never see it cited in most places. So does that mean you will always find it in some places, or you might find it in other places? I mean, that doesn't make sense. If she was trying to say you will never find it cited anywhere, then that would make a lot more sense. But you will never find it cited in most places. So that just doesn't make any sense to me. But maybe she will clarify it. Let's see.
What you used to see in medical research is how being fat is correlational to certain diseases. Notice how I didn't say causational, because it's not causational. There is no specific fat person disease, because people of any weight can get any disease.
Okay, wow, she's got a lot of claims in there. So let's go ahead and tackle the last one she just made, that there is no fat person's disease, that people of any size can get any disease. And I swear, every time I hear this, it's almost as if I have been summoned. Because at 360 pounds, I had given myself obesity-induced asthma. It tells you right in the name what caused it, what induced the asthma, my obesity. And obesity-induced asthma is actually a different condition than traditional asthma. Traditional asthma has to do with the inflammation inside your airways. Obesity-induced asthma is caused by the buildup of visceral fat around the lungs that prevent them from expanding properly. It's a completely different mechanism and therefore a different condition. And yes, it is a fat person's disease because you have to have obesity to get obesity-induced asthma. And I gotta say, at least from my experience, it was when I was at around 330 and above that I felt the effects of that, dramatically so. It was like I could never catch my breath, no matter what I did. And at the time, I was married to my ex-husband, and he has asthma. And so he always had his rescue inhalers, and I legitimately tried his rescue inhalers a couple of times thinking it might help. But because they're completely different conditions, it did nothing whatsoever, because that was never going to solve my issue. The only treatment for obesity-induced asthma is weight loss. So right then and there, I already know that that's just inaccurate, because that condition does exist, and I gave that to myself when I was at 360 pounds. So yeah, that is a fat person's disease. It's literally in the name. So then let's go ahead and back up to the other claim that she's making, and that is in medical research, it's always showing that these risks are correlational and not causational. So I gotta say, there's always two arguments that I think of almost immediately every time I hear fat acceptance say this, because they love to say this. So according to their logic, you will never find obesity listed on anyone's certificate. You just won't find that. And so because of that, obesity doesn't unalive people, right? Well, first off, in my own personal experience, I just know that to be patently false. As I mentioned in my last video, my cousin passed away when he was 39 years old. This was just 4 years ago. He had obstructive sleep apnea that was directly caused by his obesity. So yes, the COD was not obesity, but it was the obstructive sleep apnea. And the obstructive sleep apnea was directly caused by his obesity. So I get it that it's not on some certificate, but we all know exactly what caused that. So using their own logic, you'll never see on some certificate that someone was unalived by a drunk driver either. What you will find is that they had injuries that led to them being unalive. That is often what you will find. You will never find on anyone's certificate anywhere that they were unalived by a drunk driver. So according to their logic, drunk drivers don't unalive people, even though we know that that is just absolutely untrue. That is completely false. I mean, especially after what I just went through over the summer with my family when we got smashed into by a drunk driver. Yeah, it was a miracle that no one got hurt or worse in that scenario. So yeah, I am very certain that that is the case. But when it comes to fat acceptance, they will use that type of logic to apply that obesity doesn't unalive people because there is no direct link. There's always going to be some intermediary along the way, whether it be the sleep apnea, or it could be heart disease or diabetes or the complications thereof. So when you're playing those types of mental gymnastics, it's very easy to see how quickly that can fall apart. And then the other thing it does bring to mind every time I hear this type of argument, this correlation doesn't equal causation, that this type of behavior doesn't directly lead to this potential health outcome. It very much reminds me of what Big Tobacco did for decades, trying to get out of liability and responsibility for what they covered up. And we all know that smoking is not good for us. We all know that Big Tobacco tried to cover it up for decades and eventually had to pay out how much in class action lawsuits. So that's kind of what it reminds me of. When I know from my own experience, yes, obesity did cause my cousins directly. There was an intermediary, but that didn't happen without the obesity. Just like the asthma that I'd given myself. That didn't happen without the obesity. So whether or not those in body positivity or fat acceptance ever wish to admit it, I mean, I just gave you 2 examples from my very own life that go against what they're trying to say.
In fact, things like diabetes and cardiovascular disease are grossly underdiagnosed in thin people because fat people are tested for that shit constantly. And thin people are not tested for it constantly because doctors are like, oh, they're thin. They're fine. So like...
Okay, so is that somehow the failing of the thin person? Or wouldn't that be on the doctor who wasn't ordering the tests?
Honestly, you should really be telling thin people to get their preventive screenings because, like, I go to my doctor every year, like you're supposed to get my preventive screenings. Do you do that? A lot of thin people don't. I actually just had this conversation with my new PCP. She was like, have you been going to a PCP every year? And I'm like, yeah, I have. And she was like, good, because honestly, I have had this conversation with a lot of people. They don't do that. And I'm like, I know. People should.
Okay, but that's not what the doctor said. If what she is saying in her own story is accurate, her doctor said that people aren't going to their preventative screenings. Not thin people aren't doing it, just people in general. So I've got to assume that's going to include people of all shapes and sizes, right?
People should do that. And I'm not saying that those prior studies that said they were correlational didn't exist. I'm acknowledging that those are out there. That you're not going to get an argument from me that those don't exist or that they're wrong. What I am saying is that newer medical research that has come out that I have talked about and have linked for you that I know you won't go and read because you're the one who's denying that newer medical research exists, is saying that what those studies didn't take into account are things like social determinants of health, genetics, weight stigma, poor treatment by healthcare providers, preventive screenings, like things that could have skewed those studies and not looked for underlying causes or like why people weren't diagnosed until later. Like there were other outside factors that they didn't account for.
Okay, but as I have stated before, yes, there are going to be other factors that play a part in your health. Obviously, your genetics. I'm very well aware of that. I have a genetic connective tissue disorder called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So yes, I'm very familiar that your genetics do play a big part in your health. Also, your environment can very much play a part in your health. If you don't have clean air to breathe, that's going to be a problem. If you don't have clean water to drink, that can very much be a problem, of course. And you're also going to have other factors as well that are going to be outside of your control, like your income and where you live and all these other things, right? But you can't change those. What you do about your weight and how you manage your health, you can change those things. You're the one in control of those things. Actually, nobody else. Nobody else whatsoever. I mean, yes, I can't necessarily change where I live. It'd be incredibly difficult to pack up and move my family somewhere else. Absolutely. But I can choose what I put in the grocery cart. I can choose what I feed us for dinner. I mean, those are still my choices, and I still have to make those regardless of whether or not I can change other factors in my life. And when it comes to like your genetics or your heredity, I've heard that be used so many times that, well, you can't outrun your heredity. And yeah, I get that to some fashion, absolutely, because I mean, I still have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. No matter what I do for my health, I will still always have that. However, I also know that there are plenty of things that I can do that help manage it. And if I don't do those things, that I can make my condition worse. So wouldn't it be in my best interest to try to control what I can? I mean, even if the deck is stacked against me, shouldn't I try to put the odds in my favor? I mean, I guess maybe that's just me, but I understand that, yeah, I can't change my genetics. I understand that there's going to be other influences on my health. But I also don't want to do a disservice by doing things that I know don't help my health either. So when I was at 360 pounds and had given myself that obesity-induced asthma, there was absolutely no shot in hell I could walk or run or do anything that I love to do now as far as being physically active. And staying as active as I can has been one of the things that has tremendously helped my joints, which are affected by my Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So at least personally, I would think it's in my best interest to try to control what I can, despite the fact that there will always be other factors that I can't control. And I don't know, maybe this is just the poker player in me, but I can't change the hand that I was dealt, but I can play it to the best of my ability.
And so that's the stuff that I'm talking about that's making it correlational and not causational, which means that you don't die from obesity.
And again, it can just also mean that there's an intermediary. In the case of the drunk driver and a car crash, the car crash is the intermediary. That's what actually will end up on the certificate. So that's what studies are based off of, is what ends up on people's certificates. That's why you'll never find obesity, because it's always going to need the intermediary. So to say that it's correlational and not causational, just because it hasn't ended up as somebody's COD on some certificate, I mean, I've already seen where that has been proven to be inaccurate.
Is it a factor? Sure. But so is being tall, because you have more cells. So is smoking. So is drinking. So are a vast array of other things that put you more at risk for certain diseases.
Okay, so the being tall that she's talking about, you cannot change your height. You can, however, control whether or not you smoke, if and how much you drink, and also your lifestyle, how much you exercise, how much and what kinds of food you eat. You are the one in control of that. So I understand that, yes, there are going to be factors outside of your control, but just because there's factors outside of your control doesn't mean that you don't have a responsibility for the things that you can control, right? I mean, I can't control the weather, but it is within my power to prepare for it. So, I mean, I can't predict if and when a tornado would ever hit my house, but knowing I live where I do and that it's a very real possibility, I mean, we always have to be aware. We look at the weather, we know where to go and what to do in case of one. So, I mean, yeah, I can't control whether or not it comes here, but I can control how I respond to it. And so I get that there's always going to be these situations that you can't control other people or other factors in your life. But that doesn't mean you don't have responsibility for the things that you can take care of and control.
So are other things that are also beyond your control. So you have certain risk factors. And I don't know why we are blaming people for those things other than you being loudly fat phobic under the guise of, but I care about you?
No, it's not that. It's knowing that there are these risk factors. Why would we support that? Why wouldn't we want to support people trying to lead a healthier lifestyle? I mean, if somebody was drinking all the time and developed a problem with that, wouldn't you want them to try to seek help for that and support their recovery? If somebody's addicted to substances, wouldn't you want them to get help? I mean, so let me be very clear. I am definitely never trying to blame anybody, ever. What I am trying to do is share the experiences of what I've gone through in the hopes that others might not have to go through what I went through. Or if there's somebody who is going through what I was going through, that they can see a way out of it and know that things could get better for them. That's it. It's not trying to blame people and say that you deserve this. This is exactly what we went through in my last video, that you must deserve this. It's not about that. It's about understanding that with risk factors, if you are not doing what you need to manage that, if you are going to smoke, there can definitely be consequences to that action. If you're going to drink to excess, there can definitely be consequences to that action. If you are going to be morbidly obese, there can definitely be consequences to that action. And it's not about trying to assess blame. It's about trying to warn others of the pitfalls of that lifestyle. So there we have it. Evidently, obesity is just correlational and not causational when it comes to unaliving people. There is absolutely no disease that is exclusive to fat people. When I know I've got two very personal examples in my life that have affected me very personally. The obesity-induced asthma that I had given to myself and had to find my way out of, and then losing my cousin at 39. This isn't to blame anybody. This is hopefully to save others from going through what I have gone through, because I wouldn't wish this on other people. So it's not to blame, it's to warn. But let's go ahead and see what she has to say in this next TikTok.
I'm going to educate you on the plus size fashion industry because I hear this argument a lot. They want things to sell. You have no idea how big the plus size fashion industry actually is.
Okay, so let's go ahead and read that comment. It says, you realize that stores want to sell. They don't care about anything beyond making money. Why are you looking to a corporation to coddle? So long as the tills are full, their job is done. So we'll go ahead and see what she has to say about that.
Or how it works. I have seen other figures, but 288 billion in 2023 and projected to be over 500 billion by 2033. Everybody brings up, oh, the fabric cost, it costs so much more to produce.
Okay, so I just want to point out that if the plus size fashion industry is worth that much money, then doesn't that indicate that people are able to find plus size clothing?
Plus size clothing. Everybody wants to talk about the different cost to make clothes with more fabric, right? That's an argument you guys always bring up. Let me explain to you how that works. When a brand produces sizes X small through extra large, they average the cost of the difference in fabric, right? So the difference between an XS and an XL, they go, oh, it costs this much money to make this many sizes. We will average that cost throughout these 5, whatever it is, sizes. And this is the cost for each item, right? Across those many sizes. The problem is, when that same brand puts out a plus size line, there are typically only 3 sizes instead of 5 because they don't carry the same styles in straight sizes and plus sizes. So you only get 1X, 2X, 3X typically. So you're going from
Okay, but even if stores did carry the same straight sizes and plus sizes, like the same styles, that doesn't mean that stores would then carry more plus sizes either. It just means that they would make them in the same style. Unless I'm missing something, let me know down below if I am, but that would just mean the style's the same, not that you would get more plus sizes.
A 5 spread, X small, small, medium, large, extra large, to 1X, 2X, 3X. So that style is now the cost of those being only averaged across 3 sizes instead of 5. Now, the caveat being the only place who actually did do styles in straight sizes and plus sizes briefly was Old Navy. Old Navy did this with their body quality campaign back in 2021. They did it for almost a year. So they were actually averaging the cost across all of their sizes. They did extra small through 4X. Yeah. So the cost was averaged across all of those sizes. So the cost actually may have gone up a tiny bit for the people who are at the smaller end of the range, but really pretty negligible for what it was, honestly. And plus size people got to access clothing that was being worn by people who wore straight sizes.
Okay, but what was the difference? Because negligible doesn't mean that it wasn't a difference. It means that there was some difference. So when we're talking about a difference in money being negligible, I mean, that's going to really depend on your current economic status. If you're doing okay, you might not notice the difference. But if you're not doing so hot and you're on the other end, like I have been numerous times, whether it was growing up or in my adult life, you're definitely going to notice the difference, even if other people might consider it negligible. I know people personally in my life that were affected when the Dollar Tree became the $1.25 tree. And in a lot of people's minds, a quarter difference on an item is pretty negligible. But for those individuals who were using that to shop for household necessities, that was very palpable. It wasn't negligible. It was a definite difference. So I'm genuinely curious what that difference actually was, because she can say it's negligible, but that is a very subjective term that's going to mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
So now we're going to bring up the other part of that, which is, but Old Navy and all these other people who come out with a plus size line go, oh, but it's not selling. It's not selling. So we have to pull it out of store.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, for a number of years, I did work as a manager at Lane Bryant. And at least from all the stores that I worked at, which, I mean, I did have my home store that I typically worked at, but they had no problem sending me all over Northeast Ohio for my district. So I worked at numerous locations all over my state. And I also traveled to a couple other locations just to shop with my employee discount when I had it. So I definitely saw a very similar pattern at every single store that I worked at. And that was across the board. The largest section out of the clearance section always was the size 26 and 28. You usually could find a fair number of 24s back there as well. So we definitely sold a lot more of the 16, 18, 20s, and 22s than we ever did of 26, 28s. And on a lot of items that we were sent, I mean, this was all automatic and we had no control over it. So whatever they sent us for inventory is just what they sent us. And they would send us size packs is what they were called. So the size pack that we often got at my location for my home store, that was going to be 1 to 2 size 14, 16s, 2 to 3, 18, 20s, and then 2 to 3, 22, 24s, and then 1, occasionally 2 of the 26, 28s. So just right off the rip, we were always sent less of that inventory to begin with, and then ended up with the most of those sizes on the clearance rack. So, I mean, I gotta say, I do understand that because that's exactly what I saw at Lane Bryant. And that doesn't mean that those sizes didn't sell, but they were not selling in store. So I have to imagine that stores do have their sales figures and they see what is selling in stores and what is selling well online. And if something is doing well in store, they're going to put more towards that. And if it's doing well online, they're going to scale back what is being done in store and promote more online. So I have to imagine that these stores do have all of these sales figures for all of these sizes.
Okay, so the other factors we have to talk about are marketing. Do fat people know it's there? No, they don't, because Old Navy only marketed it for 3 months. It takes longer for fat people to know that your plus sizes are in store because we are used to nothing being in store because no one carries our sizes in store. So it's going to take a long time for you to convert a plus size customer to knowing that their size is in store. You're going to have to advertise it a lot. You're going to have to advertise it online. You're going to have to advertise it in store. You're going to have plus size mannequins. You're going to have a lot of marketing because we're not going to know it's there because we're not going to be used to having access to things in store. It's going to take a while.
Okay, so all I heard throughout all of that was dollar signs. Everything she's asking for is going to cost money, and in some cases a tremendous amount of money. When you're talking marketing, that's going to cost a lot of money, whether you're doing online marketing or TV, radio, what have you. Those things cost a lot of money. Then plus size mannequins. Well, I know the last time I looked it up, there's over 1,100 Old Navy stores just in the US alone. So you're going to need multiple of those mannequins for every single store. That's also going to be another capital investment. And then the notion that plus size customers aren't used to getting plus size clothing in store. I mean, I legitimately worked at Lane Bryant. That was the only store at the mall I worked at that did only cater to plus sizes. So everyone knew that that was where you shopped for plus size clothing. I already know, at least at Lane Bryant, that's their entire business model. They've been doing that since the 1960s. So this notion that, well, plus size customers aren't used to finding sizes in store. I mean, they were at my store, and still the size 26s and 28s were among the least sellers of anything that we sold there. So
fit is also an issue. You are going to have to do fit testing on actual plus size people. Another problem with a place like Old Navy was using these like virtual AI models and stuff. They weren't fitting it on actual bodies. So the fit was off. It was not good. We are not going to buy things and keep them if they don't actually fit well on plus size bodies. So you can't give us a product that's shitty and expect us to keep buying it, because if it's shitty, why are we gonna buy it?
Okay, and yeah, don't buy it if it's shitty. Okay, I grant her that, absolutely. But also, doing wear tests on fit models is going to cost, yet again, more money. And especially if they don't get it right, then you're going to have to go back to the drawing board, reformulate, redo it, and cost, again, more money. I'm sensing a trend where she doesn't have a problem spending other people's money. This cost increase might be negligible. You can go ahead and just put all your money into this. I mean, when we're talking about spending other people's money, I mean, she's just going down a list of wish fulfillment right now.
Styles. Places who do currently have plus sizes in store, let's say like where Samira goes out to, like, I don't know, Kohl's, Macy's, I don't know, select places who may carry some plus sizes in store. They look like an old, like 70-year-old woman would wear these clothes. Like, are we looking at these clothes and going, oh, those are cool and trendy, I would buy that? No, it looks like something my deceased grandmother would wear. So like, if it's not cute, we're not buying it. Like, as a last resort, if I was like stranded somewhere and absolutely had no other option, I guess I would have to, so that I wouldn't be naked. But like, am I going to wear it by choice? No, I'm not going to. So like, if it's ugly, no. And then the other part of this that people don't understand is there are different profit margins for straight sizes versus plus sizes. And that is usually where brands don't want to give any sort of inch on. Because when you're making patterns for plus size people for the first time, because you have never ventured into plus sizes before, you're going to have to invest in it. And so there's going to be some sort of money that you have to put in up front for these things. And so there's going to be a different profit margin. Not a lot. I did see a brand owner talk about this recently. And so it may be like, you know.
Okay, and again, she has no problem spending their money. But it's not her money to spend. If this were her company, she could do whatever she pleased. But at least to my knowledge, that is not how business works. So all of these things, she fully admits, are going to be capital investments. And it's not just that they're going to have to make patterns and spend more money on fabric. They're going to also have to invest in marketing and new mannequins and fit tests and new models and all sorts of other things that all I keep hearing is just dollar signs. And believe me, I know it's got to be fun to spend other people's money. I really, truly do. But I also know that that's just not how business works. Unless they see that, hey, we're going to be able to knock this out of the park and we're going to be able to capitalize on this, and all the money we've made and all the money we've invested into it, we'll get back and then some. Most companies just really aren't going to take that risk right now. And she brings up profit margins. But yet we don't actually know what the profit margins actually are for these companies. We really don't know at all, or how much these changes she would like to be brought into these stores would actually cut into that profit margin. Because I already know that at least everything I ever learned from my experience in retail and restaurant, a lot of times these things are done by volume. So a lot of the profit margin on these pieces are going to be fairly small. And especially at the case of, like, for example, Old Navy, they don't sell expensive goods to begin with. So if, say, they're selling a whole bunch of t-shirts at $10 a piece, What do you think the profit margin is actually going to be after they have had it manufactured? They have paid for the material. They're paying the workers along the way. They get it shipped overseas over here, and then they have it shipped to these stores. And then they're still going to try to make a profit off of that. So I'm genuinely curious how much money she thinks that they are making off of these individual pieces, because I don't know, but I can just venture a guess based off of what I just ran down that it's nowhere near the money she's thinking that it is. So if you're already running on a very thin profit margin and basing your business model more on volume, I mean, that was something that McDonald's is based off of. They're not based off of profit per item. They're based off of volume. So I saw that with my very own eyes with all the years of experience that I had running McDonald's and going through the profit and loss statements and seeing where the actual profit margin was for each individual item on the menu. In many cases, especially in some of these larger companies, they're running on very thin profit margins and they're banking on volume to meet their revenue. So this notion that they'll just be able to cut into their profit margin, when we don't know where that is, we don't know how much of a margin they have to cut into. And we've already listed off all the things that she wants. She wants more marketing, new mannequins. She wants all of these new patterns, all of this, all of that. And we have no idea how much that actually would affect the profit margin. And that's the thing. Companies aren't going to just sit there and take a loss. They're not going to allow it to cut into their profit margin. They're going to raise prices for everybody across the board. And this is something that I have seen repeatedly from these movements, that they think that corporations are just going to do things out of the kindness of their heart because, well, we deserve it. And unfortunately, that's just not how business works. It might be how we wish it would work, but in practice, that's not at all how it works. So if she's expecting they're going to keep putting out these capital investments and we don't even know what their profit margin is, it's really hard to make these bold statements and say, well, you must spend your money this way, despite not knowing how their money is truly being spent to begin with.
$15 compared to like $12. So is it a big difference? No, not when you're talking about a brand that brings in billions of dollars a year. No, it's really not going to be that big of a difference. It's pretty negligible. But brands go, oh, that's a slightly different profit margin. Yeah, no, we're not going to get into that. So they just don't want to. It has nothing to do with it not being able to sell. It has nothing to do with people not buying it. It has nothing to do with the population not being there. It has to do with the fact that they don't want to. And the half-assed version of it that they do give us, when that doesn't sell because they don't do it right, they use it as an excuse.
Okay, so there we have it. Evidently, they just keep getting half-assed versions of things. And if they don't do it right, well, they're not going to buy it anyway. But also, companies should go ahead and dump a whole bunch of money into a capital investment that if it doesn't go right, she just said that they're not going to buy it and then they're going to get blamed for the half-assed reason why it didn't work. So I'm just genuinely curious what the upside might be for these companies. I mean, it sounds like it's going to be a very large upfront investment, if you want my honest opinion. If we're talking about the added cost of fabric, the marketing that she wants done, the plus size mannequins, the fit tests and models that she wants as well, and other intangibles she hasn't even mentioned, such as shipping costs. When you are offering free shipping, or I don't know, you have to ship things overseas, ostensibly something that is a 3X is going to take up more room in a package than something that is a small or a medium. It just is. I mean, I've heard people within these communities talk about how difficult it is to pack for a trip because their clothes take up more room in a suitcase. So imagine that you're running an online business that offers free shipping. So now that's going to factor into that cost as well. So all of these things run the risk of driving the price up incrementally and thus Xing people out at the bottom of the market, those that can barely afford to shop there in the first place. If prices go up, they won't be able to shop there no matter what sizes they offer. And so I get it. It's really fun to spend other people's money, but there are consequences to some of these things as well. And I don't think she's truly given that much thought. But let's go ahead and see what our friend has to say in these next couple of TikToks. In part 2, please leave a comment down below and let me know what you thought of today's video. I'm genuinely curious and I love reading all of your comments. That is where we will leave things today. I thank you so much for joining me. Please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye! That's why she came in and knocked the camera around. She just couldn't wait to see me. Hi, sweetie. Hi, can we see your beautiful eyes? You know you're well loved, huh? Oh my, what did you get stuck in your fur right now? Play-Doh.